Pooja, hi Rishab.
Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi, evening. Hi guys. It's such an overwhelming feeling to see all of you in the same frame. Hi Rishab, Pooja, Pratistha. I think Ayush, you also joined. You can switch on your camera.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hi guys. I think a lot of our students have already joined. We'll just wait for a minute and then we'll start. I think I'll just thank you so much, guys. I know for sure for Rishabh and Pratishta, these guys just got done with their class at around 6:45, 7, and they straight away joined. I'm not certain of Pooja and Ayush if you guys had a class schedule today.
I did, but I finished early.
Okay.
Yes.
Ayush,
Same, ma'am.
good. And
We were finished at 11 o'clock.
oh, that's nice. And both Rishabh and Pratishta, they are attending the session from the library. Believe me, that's my favorite part of NLS. I've visited the campus once, and uh, uh, the glass walls up till the ceiling, overlooking the sprawling green lush garden. That's my favorite part, and the mood court. So I really enjoy the life, and I'm certain you guys must be enjoying it too. Okay, let's start. I understand we're like a little crunched on time. All of you have commitments, and NLS happens to get like really hectic. So we'll start. Welcome, guys. So all our existing students and our beloved seniors, welcome back to Legal Edge. And today's session is more around, we'll just generally have like a discussion around how to structure part B and answer writing, because that essentially becomes a differentiator whether or not you make it to NLS. But before that, I extend my heartfelt gratitude. I know you guys like agreed, and you're taking time out of your hectic schedule from NLS, so thank you so much. And for all students, guys, everyone else attending the session, I have intentionally given you guys the right to switch on your cameras. If you want to just say like make it more interactive and you feel comfortable, feel free to switch on your cameras. And then towards the end, we'll take like a Q&A session and we can discuss a little bit of introduction. Rishabh and Pratishta, both of them qualified NLSAT in the year 2025. So guys, you guys have started off with your second year, right? And Pooja and Ayush, these guys have just started off with their NLS journey. They cleared NLSAT 2026, and I think they are started to get acclimatized to how hectic NLS can become. So welcome, guys. Let's just start off with the first. I mean, like a little, a lot more contextual setting. The first question is, when you started off with your preparation for NLSAT, and the first time that you wrote attempted part B, how much did you score? And since then, all that, like those little hacks or things that you did to improve and finally be able to get like a very good score in part B. Let's start with Pratishta.
Can
Pratishta
someone
wasn't
ask me
expecting.
first? Actually, I'm not sure of my score. I need to
It's
check
okay, you
in.
guys. I mean, it's okay. Even if you don't remember the score, the idea is that when all of you must have first started, I'm certain that none of you were like scoring really high. And answer
Absolutely.
writing is a skill to build. So like from the first score up to the journey. Let's start with select. Then I'll go with Puja.
So if I just keeping the score aspect aside, I think I can speak of my journey with respect to the part B, and that was my Achilles heel in some senses because I really struggled with writing answers by hand. So, just for context, I went to Ashoka University prior to this, and all of our assignments and assessments were typed out or they were digital in some senses. So, I had not essentially written an exam after my 12th grade board exams and throughout my 3 years at Ashoka. So, I really struggled with managing my time, but I think practice makes you perfect, and as I kept practicing, I certainly got the hang of it. So I think that's the most important thing about part B: be consistent and keep practicing the part B, because I think that it's a muscle really that you have to build, be it in terms of time management, writing speed, or the kind of logical thinking and the structure of your answer. That's something you develop over time and with practice.
Okay, I think helps. Key takeaway: a lot, tons and tons of practice. Pooja, your take.
So I tend to agree with Pratistha. I think my score didn't change too much, but what really changed is the timing of it because I was struggling to finish everything and I was getting very verbose. So what it made me do is once I had sort of an outline and a sort of an idea how I wanted to answer the questions, it was much better. And then following a certain method like IRAC really didn't work for me. So it took me some time to crack the style that I wanted to write in. And the other thing for me, because I did so many mocks, the other thing I realized is I end up spending the majority of the time on the first thing I attempt in part B. So then I realized the best thing to do then is to do the analytical essay first and then do the 5 case studies because the 5 case studies give you a lot of direction in terms of where you want to go and how you want to answer this, which the analytical essay is more open-ended, which you need more time to think about. So all the strategies may work for you, may not work for you. This is what worked for me, but I think practice was the key thing.
Yeah, I think one key takeaway is something that I highlight to students that analytical essays they actually test your knowledge. How much do you know? Case studies are more of an application part, and that's where you can essentially optimize your scores because you're essentially 60 marks at stake versus 15 marks for analytical essays, which essentially test the depth of your knowledge, which gradually will take like much more time versus you doing better at case studies. Okay, Ayush, your turn.
So, I remember that my Part B score was initially 28 out of 75, and I was not able to complete even the essays. So, because my background is economics, and I was majorly in mathematics, not in writing papers. So, for me, as Pratishta, my senior, and Pooja, my batchmate, also said the practice made me perfect, and I did as many mocks and as many sectional so that I can achieve the time limit for part B. And one thing I can say, because I was doing I was not into analysis so much, so I gained my skills through reasoning in legal part, through reading current affairs like judgments and this, and I get my numbers to the 240, I guess, 38, 39, 40.
I loved how Ayush felt the need to address Pratishta as ma'am.
Hmm.
The senior junior thing at NLS surfacing. I get the hierarchy, Ayush. But yes, I have seen your journey, and I think you were one of those students who a lot of times like kept giving a lot of feedback also that listen, I think this is how we can improve with regard
Yes, ma'am.
to the questions, analytical essays. So something I think all students can learn that each time you're attempting a case study, an analytical essay, do apply a lot of your mind as well. Because that's what essentially NLSAT is testing. It expects you to be generally aware, it expects you to question and not just say like simply accept things the way they are. Coming to Rishabh.
Yes, ma'am. So I share my background with Ayush. I'm also from a quantitative econ background. So initially, the first time I gave mocks, I was scoring somewhere in the mid 20s again. That's because I was writing in points. Coming from DO again, most of my exams were either very mathematical or then they were very subjective, like history, like economic history and so on. So I wasn't sure of like where to stop the analysis, what things you can reasonably infer from the information given and what things you're not supposed to like just go beyond, and also like just the time management of it all as well. Like it's very difficult to come up with like a very logically coherent and structured answer in those times. So I think the biggest contributor for me was initially time management. Once I started getting the time in check and I was able to finish the answers, then just like learning about general principles, arguments I can make, logical things that I can use, and where to stop and how to like just quickly move on from noting something versus just expanding on it and like messing up my time. So yeah, I think it's very possible and reasonable with like a few months of practice to go from the 20s to 40s.
So how regularly you guys were to practice? I think so. One good thing I think you guys were always very regular in the answer writing classes. Pooja and Ayush were, and times you guys could not. There were like a lot of practice. But how regularly? So this is from some. I do get this question a lot from everyone. And meanwhile, guys, you have any questions? Please drop it in the chat box. I'll pick it up. How regular were you with practicing answer writing? I mean, like once a week or just the classes, twice a week? What was the frequency of practice? Do you guys want me to go like alphabetical order? Somebody would want to voluntarily take up this question.
I can. I initially, I like you said, you did the writing classes. I attended a few, and when I couldn't attend in person, I caught up. But after the sort of once I got the hang of it was largely the mocks because we had 2 mocks every week anyway. So that was for me it was adequate practice. But someone who feels that they have not written in a while or they've not really got the hang of it, probably a little more.
I think yours was also for everyone here, whether or not how much time, effort, and energy is to be invested in answer writing, do factor in your background. So Pooja and Pratishta, they relatively come from backgrounds wherein they were at least accustomed to writing. Of course, different challenges, but they were accustomed to writing and like certain command over language. With Rishabh and Ayush, the background's like different. They do not per se come from backgrounds where they're expected to write so much, but both of them still have like a decent command over language, and language does gives you an edge. Part B, I think the entire NLSAT paper is slightly more inclined towards people with command over language. But yes, part B, you do get an edge. So if you're not from a background wherein you have like a level of fluency and command over language, you will have to say like multiply your efforts or amplify your efforts. On that note, coming to Ayush, how often do you used to practice answer writing?
For
I think Ayush is a network issue, I believe. Meanwhile, let's go to Pratishta.
Yeah. So, I mean, one drawback with me was that I started preparing slightly later than I actually should have started preparing. So, and that also took me a while to recalibrate my approach with respect to how I was approaching the exam. I initially started with just doing answer writing. So there was a good few weeks where I was just writing answers and practicing. But then I very soon realized that I need to recalibrate my approach because I was not able to time myself at all. I didn't have any semblance of how my timing should be. So then I realized that it's way better for me to switch to mocks because it was also closer to exam. So I wanted to be prepared in the sense that I am sitting for a full mock at go and getting myself accustomed to the habit of writing the entire exam in one stretch instead of like doing things like practicing 2 questions at a time and then going back to the essay or then going back to sort of the MCQ portion of it. So with respect to answer writing, I think again, as I've said, I'd just like to reiterate that practice is extremely important, especially if you're not accustomed to it's not academic writing per se, but just writing and language in general. I think practice will help you get there. And in terms of practice, not just practice of writing but practice of reading as well, because the especially the analytical essay part, it will require you to apply your mind and give examples from your life, the real world. For example, I had a question about social media and teenagers, so it's something that's out in the news, it's something that's extremely contemporary, and most Gen Z or most teenagers will know something or the other about this. So it's about application of mind, so you need to broaden your horizon and be more holistic in the way you're also approaching the exam. So I think that plays an important role.
Yeah, I think NLSAT is actually seeking how opinionated you are and how well informed your opinions are. Although I still feel that NLSAT 2026 Part B was like slightly tougher than 2025. 2025 was like slightly more generic topics versus social conscription or deplatforming people in 2026. So 2025 topics were such that these are the discussions you generally would have on dinner tables with peers. 2026 demanded you to be like a lot more well prepared and have like a more nuanced understanding of topics. If you do not know what deplatforming essentially means, you do not know what conscription actually means, you wouldn't really be able to write or comment on that issue. So something that students discount or they underestimate the value of diverse reading. So you guys have to like put in a lot of time, effort, and energy in actually just being reading and being a lot more well read, well informed. Which brings me to Rishabh. Rishabh, how regular or often do you used to practice?
Ma'am, so before my NLSAT, I took a drop here. So essentially, I was following a regular pace of around 2 mocks a week. I think it's very important because I had decided that I'd probably give the exam around 3 to 4 hours a day. And not more than that. Like I didn't prepare for like 8 or 10 hours a day, as a lot of people in drops do. So it's very also important to analyze the mock after you give the mock, and like that the analysis itself takes just as much time as giving a mock does, in fact. So for me, it was I gave the mock on one day and I'd either analyze it, half of it on the same day, or I'd take the next day to completely analyze it. That means for part B, of course, checking which arguments I've missed. If there are like model answers along with the mocks, then checking which arguments I could have missed, or maybe like the way I phrased them was not better, or maybe I could have made them more succinct and just like saved on a lot of time. And of course, for part A, it means getting the questions correct or wrong, especially for current affairs, and like analyzing why my reading comprehension, like some answers were better than the others, some I missed out on. So I'd give like around, it's a 2.5 hour mock and then a 2.5 hour analysis. That like would make it around like 2 mocks a week. And like before the exam, I was just the week before the exam, I gave 3 mocks. 2 weeks before the exam, I gave 3 mocks a week. But other than that, I had a consistent pace of around 2 mocks a week. I think that gives adequate time to just like also reflect on your mistakes and try to improve before you give on the next mock.
I think very well articulated, Rishabh. You also have to say like dial down onto a frequency of the mocks and frequency of practice in general. And something that I feel that students that don't write, they will come and tell you that, listen, how to write, how to improve, but you have to start somewhere to at least have an anchor or reference point as to how bad you are to be able to reach that spectrum, the good side of the spectrum. So practice is the thing. I think the second last question, I'll just have one more question after this so that you guys can have like enough breather after your classes and everything and enjoy your weekend. I understand at law school there's nothing called as weekend, but nevertheless. So what were the list of sources? So I think the problem that I feel is analytical essay. I mean, and in general, part A, in fact, inclusive of part A, that we keep telling students that you have to diversify your reading. But then there's so much to read. So what were the sources that you guys generally refer to build that knowledge base, both from perspective of part A and part B? Of course, part B is a lot of practice, but you nevertheless need that knowledge base, which will help you to write more layered and nuanced answers. So what were the ideal sources that you guys referred to? Let's start with Ayush because Ayush like dropped off the last time because of network.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the
No, it's
there
absolutely
was.
fine.
So,
Understandable.
ma'am, for my resources, I mainly was the mocks and newspaper. That was the gist and the foundation for the NLSAT exam, I think. And apart from them, I also read Livewire and compendiums from Legal Edge only for current affairs. And I used to read books. I used to write blogs on Medium. That's why I
Okay.
was
I would
able
love to
to.
go and read your blogs on Medium. I didn't know that you were actively contributing to Medium. I will go read them.
I'm sure, ma'am. But I stopped writing now. But coming to that, and that's the only resources I refer to. And for extra, I refer to third parties mock series also for other
Oh.
coaching sectors.
Pratishta?
Yeah, I agree with Ayush. And I think this is also, I'm building off of that. And as I previously mentioned, you need to broaden your horizons because if I'm speaking about the 2025 NLSAT exam, we had an excerpt from this book by a stand up comedian named Kanan Gill.
Yes.
So it's not like any source of literature or any source of information is off limits for NLSAT. Everything under the sun is probably going to show up in your exam. And I think that's what you need to keep in mind. Being a reader helps. If you're intuitively a reader and it's an inherent interest of yours, it's going to be extremely helpful. And you can build that muscle as well. You don't need to have an inherent interest. You, as much as you practice, you'll build that muscle because that will help you not only go through the passages quickly, you will be able to comprehend and analyze it better. In terms of sources, a newspaper like a Daily National is a non-negotiable. You need to read the newspaper every day for at least say 7 to 8 months before the exam. Diligently follow a newspaper, and in the newspaper you need to read the editorials. I think that's extremely helpful. And in my case, because of my institution, I had institutional access to a lot of magazines as well. So like Economic and Political Weekly, there's Aeon essays online, so you can refer to that. So if there are certain, magazines that you have access to, you should read that as well. Because again, variety of interest in along with depth of knowledge, I think having a certain level of breadth of knowledge is also very important for NLSAT. So, but that being said, don't also overburden yourself with like too many sources at the same time because then it'll be an information overload, and you probably don't have that amount of cognitive resources. So while you're using certain resources, make sure that they're good quality resources, so that the kind of information you're deriving is going to actually help you out in the longer run.
Okay. Pooja?
Of course, I echo a lot of what Ayush and Pratishta already said. The thing I also would add is, other than the national, I would also say one very good international. So, as someone who lived in the West already, I had a habit of reading in New York Times every day, any which way. So again, that's not something I read for NLSAT physically. It's just something I do anyway. So I definitely would recommend one international paper of some good quality. Other than that, I used to read the Economist, but they used to give you little blurbs that come to your inbox, so you don't even have to go and read the whole damn thing. Even if you read blurbs, you have something of an idea, and then if something interests you, go and read further into that. Other than that, there is something called as the SEO, which is actually done a lot by the NLS faculty, which is Supreme Court Observer. They do very good quality articles, very academic, high-level articles about what's going on in the Supreme Court. So it just gives you a sense of what's going on in the country in a legal sense. And other than that, I'd say topical fiction. Like Pratishta brought up Kanan Gill, we had Heartland. And I remember us talking, and I was so sure something from Heartland was going to come.
We had this discussion, and we were like, we of course expected. Off late, NLS that shifted their focus to a lot more on literary fiction. So if you'll analyze a paper from 22 to 26, 22, 23, there was hardly any literary fiction. 25, 26, they have significantly increased the weightage of literary fiction. So pretty certain that we'll be expecting questions from Heartland. Yes, Pooja, continue.
So, so just look at what the Booker Prize for the year is. Just look at specifically the Heartland was such a sure shot because it was Kannada literature that was translated and it won the Booker Prize. So any book that is topical in the current times, past 6 months to a year, that will definitely help. And like Pratishta said, if you have a reading habit, that's fantastic. If you don't, develop one. And as diverse reading, even if it is fiction, don't you never know how it's going to shape your thought process, and it can feed into whether it is analytical essay or even, like, for instance, one of the questions was a short in 2026 was the shortlisted man book of was Kiran Desai. They asked what was her previous book. Now, it so happened that I already had read the book and it was helpful, but a lot of people stumbled on the question because the last book she had written was in 2006. So it just helps to have an understanding of who the previous year Booker Prize winners were, who the Pulitzer Prize winners were. So those kind of books and topics definitely help. And other than that, of course, all your current affairs that you guys present in the compendiums, that helps to definitely go through. Because one of the questions I wouldn't have answered if I hadn't read the compendium, like the teacher question, I remember. So
the award one.
Yeah, so I think generally being aware is what the faculty keeps saying again and again. And what does that mean? Is when you read the newspaper and if you don't know what it is, what something is about, to go and read around it. And that builds your muscle about that particular topic and also widens your understanding of the world in general. So, if you have the Iran crisis, go understand the history of Iran and America and, the Islamic Revolution, why they have what they have in place and why there's enmity between Iran and who are all their proxy. So understanding that geopolitical world order and the history makes a lot of difference. So that is just one example, and that you can do with anything. And that's what they're talking about, general awareness. That's not something you can build in a month or two. It takes some time, especially if you're not somebody who already reads all the time. And one other thing I would add is the 1 month before the exam, be very, very vigilant of what's coming in the paper, because a lot of questions come from that 1 month, I feel. At least I saw that.
In fact, last year, 6 to 7 questions from for March itself. March 2026.
Yeah,
6 to 7 questions
from previous as well, but that 1 month before really does have a huge amount of weightage in terms of current affairs.
I completely agree. It's just about, I think, all of you I'll come to you, Rishabh, but just a couple of pointers that I wanted to highlight. All of you very beautifully articulated that, they expect you to just know things. Otherwise, you do not really expect a paper to ask you that which amongst the 4 has the highest YouTube subscribers. So they just expect you to be generally aware and, gauge in a lot of pop culture themes, gauge in a lot of issues which generally shape the mainstream discussions. So the more you'll read about it, and Pooja also very interestingly highlighted that, learn to connect dots. So anything, so even if there's a static question, you will find the pretext in the current realm. So even if there were questions like around Venezuela and then similarly ancillary questions, all of them had their pretext on what the ongoing conflict. So just
Yes.
read as much as you guys can. And one thing that I teach in classes is be inquisitive. The more inquisitive you'll be, you'll naturally gravitate towards learning more. And the Supreme Court observer, again, a side that I also suggest, because time and again, NLSAT, it tests you on, most importantly, Supreme Court judgments. And SU has like beautiful just briefs of Supreme Court judgments, and must be like extremely helpful for you guys in law school. I'll come to Rishabh now.
Um, yeah, ma'am. So I think like my peers have wonderfully covered the list of sections. I think the reason NLSAT tests these like you to connect the dots is also like the way we're taught here. That is, before every reading, we're supposed to know what the or who the author is and what they're based on, what their work is, what other fields of work have they worked about. So you contextualize everything that you're reading. That's just like I think a good habit to do it is a good practice to get that done is whenever you're reading something, even if you encounter something on your social media like some famous influencer is arrested. So, like for sedition, then what is sedition? How does it extend to? How has it changed over the years? Why is it such a like a big controversy now? Just like Google these things if you can. If you're already like reading the editorials regularly, you probably develop over time an understanding of these general principles and how they always contextualize. But just like as ma'am said, be inquisitive, and if you like just constantly expose yourself to the range of sources that like I think Pooja, Pratishta, Ayush have already mentioned, you'll also develop the attention span to get through the long passages, as well as develop the vocabulary that you don't have to like read the same things over and over again to understand them in context. So yeah, I think just like be inquisitive, read a lot of your interest as well, but whatever is of course important, like whatever is in context for that year, especially for the last 4 months and the last 2 months, give more emphasis to that, and just like try to always not like think of it as a static exam or static bunch of facts that you need to memorize, but just like a web of information. Like try to understand wherever what you're reading is coming from, what it's about, and why is it important, and why is it like of current relevant context. I think like legal edge classes think or teach of it also as like 5 questions, like who, what, why, when, how. So like try to know these 5 of every piece of information that you read.
Thanks, Rishabh. I think thanks each one of you, because of course I keep telling my students I'm behind their lives, like be inquisitive, because generally that's the person that I am. I would want to know like everything. I generally would ask them like, listen, tell me the difference why it's Man Booker Prize and Booker Prize. Like you should be inquisitive enough to know the difference. So I think that's something that they'll gradually build. But thank you so much, guys, because you've been actually highlighting the important points and something that they're supposed to take note of in their preparatory journey, not just from perspectives like clearing the examination, but even just for the journey that they're prepping up, even in their professional trajectory at law school. Okay, for everyone else, if you're like any questions, please drop them in the chat box. I've taken note of a couple of them, but I think they have already answered most of your questions. Anything in addition, drop it, because I'll just be concluding. This is going to be my last question, and then we'll let these guys go. These guys have like a very hectic schedule. So last question is, it sounds extremely cliche, but like key things that NLSAT 2027 aspirants should take note of, and like these are absolutely non-negotiable. Who would want to go first for it?
I think I can go first. And again, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, I think being resilient with NLSAT is extremely important. And I think in general, and I hope all of you make it to NLS and I get to meet you guys soon. That's a skill you will need at NLS as well, to not give up, to keep pushing. There will be highs, there will be lows, and sometimes you just got to trust the process and trust yourself and the effort you're putting in. So be resilient, put in the work. You will see the effort. So you will see the effort bring fruit sooner or later. But it's, I think, and that's an important life skill in general, and one that is extremely helpful at NLS. Being resilient, being persistent, and being consistent. More importantly, because you cannot put 100% effort one day and then not put any effort in the next 3 days and then try to build a habit out of it. I think that's not going to work with NLSAT or with NLS in general as well. I think being consistent and putting small amounts of effort and doing biteable, sizes and chunks of work and tasks every day is the way to go. Because if you overwhelm yourself all at once and don't give yourself any time to recuperate, that's going to take a toll on you as well, and it's not going to yield any result. So be persistent, be resilient, and be consistent. That's probably
It's
my take on
essentially
it.
the power of compounding. I mean, for all
Yeah.
students who are scared of that, you're not that articulate, or you'll possibly end up writing a not so good answer. But it's essentially the power of compounding. Maybe like on a scale of 1 to 10, you'll do a 2 today, you'll do a 2.1 tomorrow, but you'll eventually reach like a 8 or 9. But yes, I mean, the power of consistency, and something that I tell my students, that listen, motivation is extremely overrated. So be disciplined, be consistent, and it's the power of compounding that you'll eventually see the results. So thank you so much, Pratishta. And also, I think Pratishta, each time she brings this to the table, that she will also beautifully highlight the need to take some time out for yourself, that you need to recuperate as well. You need to take, you have to ensure that there's no cognitive burnout, there is, and you have enough time. It's essentially an exam that you're preparing for, so you need to give that time to yourself as well. So I like how she beautifully shifts the focus to that aspect of the journey as well, because I understand that preparing for any competitive exam is extremely taxing. So I think much appreciated. I'll come to Pooja.
I think I'll echo a lot of what Pratishta said. I think there will be cognitive burnout. There were days that you will do mocks where you've done worse than the first mock you did. It's just about, if that is the case, then take a day out and like just reset and find whatever it is, that make sure you have some activity or something that you do that gives you that reset. And the other thing is, identify early what your weakness and what your strengths are, because then you can play to your strengths and amend your weaknesses. So and I think doing mocks, especially physical mocks, really make a difference, because I know how much I screwed up on the OMR sheet thing, and I've said this before as well. It's something that if you've not done it, can trip you up quite badly, and especially in the nerves of the exam can get you pretty badly. And then read everything possible, and make that as much of a muscle thing that you can. Especially if you're not a reader, make sure you try to find the time and do as many mocks as possible, and don't give up. Like there will be days when you will do really badly. I know I've been there. And times it's like I thought I was not going to make it. And talking to Kajal or Shruti, all of these people really helps. They're really there for you. They were there even on 1 o'clock on the night before the exam, saying, if you guys are struggling, just call. We'll talk you through it. And so take the help, take the support. It really helps.
Thank you so much, Pooja. And guys, please take note, there will be days when you will perform, you might be scoring like really high, and then there will be this one tough mock that will throw and you'll not end up scoring. So the idea is to not get demotivated, but like a lot of learnings, and from there you improve. So thank you so much, Pooja, for highlighting. And of course, we'll come to offline practice, OMR, etc. But I think all of these students, these were like extremely consistent, and they kept, trying each time to get better. Ayush, your turn.
So I will be agreeing with them. So burnout is real, and I have always faced this. कि अब मेरा मन नहीं है, why I'm doing this? I can go easily to CLC and remain in Delhi only. But I think the motivation was to get into NLS Bangalore, so that really helped. And the one thing I will be adding is to start the preparation, to start the practice for Part B, because initially I remained very inconsistent with the practice, and I never give much thought to it. But I guess the majority of the students, the mistake is that they don't start, and though they think it is very easy to write the paper like this, but and they fumble and they fails in it. So from my side, it is the one core argument is that to start the preparation and get into mocks and start writing sectionals and read judgments and everything.
It's basically the start, you can perfect it later. So I think half the time a lot of potential is wasted in deciding as to when to start. So it's not that you don't have a plan, but you just continue to procrastinate. Coincidentally, I read this very beautiful article today, this morning, which technically the core of the argument was that, listen, just commit yourself to anything. And one thing that I vouch also, that commit yourself to anything for 66 days. On the 67th day, you might just say like change the course in entirety, but you'll still have learnings, versus not starting, you'll pretty much be at the very same position that you are initially. So start. And to summarize, I think Ayush has enlightened us a very interesting point, that just start, you can perfect it later, but start today. Which brings me to Rishabh.
Yeah, mom, I think again my peers have mentioned the importance of like taking break, taking rests, and not burning out. Maybe just some practical strategies. I know most of the people who are preparing will either be still in college or just out of college, and a lot of them might be working. So, like, unlike other examinations, which like have a very specific demographic of school students, like these people are from all sorts of backgrounds and have all sorts of commitments, and it gets very easy to like just be isolated in your prep. I would say if you can like connect with your peers, other peers who are um, also studying for the examination, just get in touch with them. Just like have discussions, have conversations, discuss GK if you want to discuss current affairs, make study groups, make a study schedule together if you can. That sense of community is like one way of recuperating and obviously not getting lost in it. But maybe some like other important things, like some practical things, or keep up with this year's current information. A lot is happening. Of course, the World Cup, the finals on Monday. Keep up with
I
the
am
UK
not rooting
leadership.
for Argentina. I'm so sorry, Rishabh.
Uh,
I had to interrupt. I
no,
am
ma'am.
not rooting for Argentina. I really want Spain to
That's
win.
no, ma'am. I think that's the first major thing we disagree on. But yeah. Just like make sure don't miss out on like Sonam Wangchuk's fast, the UK leadership changes, the like India's hydrogen train debut, the UK like the US visa restrictions, the World Cup itself, the
The
US
debate
Iran
around
conflict.
passport and
Yeah,
whether or not you're like
yeah. Nationality
it to be
versus
used as a
citizenship.
yes, nationality was it. So I think all of this is right there in front of you. It's just that with the advent of technology and the way it is now entrenched into our lives, we are accustomed to reading everything so superficially that we do not really take into account or factor in the underlying policy or the broader policy debates. If you just start to read from that perspective, I think you'll learn a lot. But yes, sorry to interrupt, Rishabh. I'm so sorry. I'm just like not a huge Argentina fan, so I had to interrupt. But yeah, you can conclude.
No, not at all, ma'am. So just like, yeah, these topics, maybe the tech-enabled scam, the market volatility and so on, but also like recently a friend of mine who's also like a very good ranker at NLS told me something which I think echoes with me deeply. That is learning happens not when you're trying to learn, but it happens during rest. So make sure when you're giving mocks, when you're giving your like sectional tests and you're learning those current affairs, give yourself time to consolidate that information. Like give yourself like basically make sure that after you're learning whatever you're learning, just give yourself a day or two or at least a few hours and test yourself the next day and then test yourself again and again. You have to, instead of like cramming it down, and that's why like really starting early matters. This is the perfect time to start. But even like the best time to start is always now. Even if you're a few months late, it's fine. Try to give yourself as much leeway and space as possible. That'll be so much better for your mental health, and you'll have a great time preparing for the examination and making it here.
Thank you so much, Rishabh. I'll just conclude on to one note to motivate everybody who's attending the session that, guys, life at NLS is hectic, but it's beautiful. And I think you grow either in either of the two scenarios. Either you have exceptionally well teachers, or you have an exceptionally you're surrounded by a great set of peers, and NLS offers you both. I think, and I primarily that crossed my mind because you mentioned that another friend of yours, like NLSAT holder, and suggested something. So these are the kind of discussions that would essentially the kind of people that you surround yourself with. So your growth is directly proportional to the people that you surround yourself with. So do put in all possible. And I wish to see each one of you at NLS next year. Rishab, Pooja, Pratishta, Ayush, I mean, I think I always fell short of words as to how to express my gratitude. You guys always take out the time and always here. We'll mostly see you offline next month because something that I'm planning. It's like an offline meet. I would want to really meet you guys in person. So I would share the invites with each one of you. But until then, thank you so much. And yeah, it's always fun to have the discussion with you. Thank you for taking out the time.
A pleasure, always. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, ma'am.
Yeah,
Glad
Thank
to
you,
be here.
ma'am.
And best of luck to all of you, and you definitely can do it. Don't stress.
Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Okay, somebody's peeping in from Pratishta's screen.
He is also
Bye,
he's also
guys.
a peer at NLS, and he was very excited to say hi. So
Hi,
yeah.
hi. Can you please introduce yourself? I would love.
Sure, I'll introduce myself. Hi, folks. My
You
name is
unmute.
Ashish. Oh, am I?
Okay.
Yeah, you're unmuted only.
So people can hear me.
Yeah, people can hear you.
Yes, folks. What should I say? I
Introduce
think
yourself.
well, I am a peer of Pratishta and Rishab, and I just saw them putting a lot of effort into this meeting just to like make sure that you guys have the right advice down. So I think the hope is that if you do follow your advice, hopefully I will see you next year यहाँ पे. And I
Do you
hope to
have
see
anything valuable to add to all students preparing for 27?
do what the students are preparing for 2027. And then
Yes.
That's really
NLSAT, I would say just like keep giving mocks, keep evaluating your scores, and or क्या advice दे सकता हूँ? I mean, I didn't put a lot of effort in, particularly for my own prep. So I don't think
It's
if I'm
okay,
the
Ashish. I think that's where we can end it. And that is why
yes.
that is why I'd used the term, I'd used a qualifier, valuable advice. So
No, but I think Ashish is very hardworking. I think from what I have spoken to him, he's just said that it's as many mocks as you can give, and I think that's an advice both Rishabh and I can also attest to.
yeah, I think all of you are very consistent with mocks. But guys, I think you guys have a happening life at NLS. So if at all they were like compromising on any efforts that you were putting in, I think it's time to double down your efforts for your preparation. Thank you so much, guys. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.